to get started and see how much light we have, and I'll just get my voice for right now. And we see if we get the music turned off, maybe. And is the mic going? Okay, all right. So, welcome back to school. How many of you are registered? I remember this. Does anybody remember back in going into high school, and the principal says something like, "Look around, look around you." Here, this is my principal at Freeth High School. Look around. Only 1 out of 3 of you is going to actually graduate. And look around again. Only 1 out of 10 of you is going to college. Oh man. So study and don't take drugs. That was the message. Except then it was like, don't drink. I don't think we even have drugs in Ferndale as far as I knew. I'm sure they were there. But anyway, welcome. We're back from a summer recess. My name is Rob Pasick, and I am the founder of this event. I was talking to Sonia Parker. Where's Sonia? And Sonia remembers, we're trying to remember when it was. I think it was about 95. We used to hold this upstairs at Zingerman's in that little room, and we had about 12 people. So I just started it as a fancy because I run small groups. That's what the Connect part. And Sonia was part of that, and Kid, who's sitting next to her, was part of that. And we started to bring in speakers. So we brought in Bob Quinn and a few other people from the university, and it's kind of grown into this. We were at the IT Zone for a while. We've been here at Zingerman's for about the last 10 years, so I'd really like to welcome everybody. I see a lot of new faces. How many people is this their first time here? Oh, fantastic. That's great. So, Neel and Stephanie, you guys are really bringing them out, right? They brought their fan club. So that's great. And we've had a lot of different types of leaders from the university, leaders from industry, writers. We've had nonprofit leaders before, but we decided this fall that we're going to focus on different approaches to leadership. Are there differences between leadership in the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector? We're going to explore that today around nonprofits, and then next month we're going to do it around the arts, leadership in the arts. So I've got some distinguished people from the different arts, Russ Collins, who you all know, and Marie Clough, and a few other people. I'm hoping to get the new director for the UMS to see if we can do that, the new director of the museum, right? Actually, we introduce people, so I'm going to put you right on the spot. Stand up. Can't hold their copies? Stand up. Tina Olson, who's come here all the way from Massachusetts. Yeah. She's going to be running the museum, right? The University of Michigan Museum. Fantastic. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome to be here. And Ken Fisher brought her along. And Ken, how was your first assignment as a teacher? Did the kids all come on up here and tell us?
Well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I when you retire, you start to teach. But I've got great mentors and models in teaching that I've been able to observe for 72 years. No, I'm doing an arts leadership course at the University of Michigan, and what you might be interested in is Aaron Dworkin, who's been a speaker here in the past. In his 2 years as dean of the School of Music, he started something called Excel to provide some entrepreneurship training for that second bassoon player who realizes, I can't do this forever. And so this is to help them understand there are other kinds of careers you can have, and maybe you guys will address that sort of things. But I'm having a good time teaching, and I'm writing a book.
Oh, good. Yes.
You know something about that?
Yes. I've been trying to tell Ken for 5-6 years he should write a book. But Ken, just a couple pieces of feedback. I did observe your class from the back. You did have chalk on your coat, and those kids that were messing around in the back and throwing spitballs.
Dancers, they're called dancers.
You're not supposed to. Well, spanking is out. Let's put it that way. Well, in most cases it's out. But anyway. He was the doctor. So anyway, no other feedback than that to start with, but next week we'll give you some more. And I'd like to also, this is possible to do because of our great sponsors, one of whom is Roger Rail, who's a media guru in town and does a lot of video for different events like this. He's really a video master of trying to bring new tech and new ideas to the community. He's created my own YouTube channel, which is now, I read last night it was 7,444th in the views list, so I'm moving right up there, Roger. But all of these programs, including the past ones, are on this YouTube channel. So if you either Google my name or you Google LeadersConnect, and actually they're pretty great for using for training. I know a lot of you don't have a big training budget, but if you want to do like a lunch and learn, watch one of these videos, hear people like Aaron Morgan or Ken Fisher, Margaret Parnes. We've had a number of speakers in this group talking about their work, researchers. They're all out there and archived, and it's pretty cool to watch and participate. So and that's a free activity. All of these are posted on there, and then also I do a Dr. Rob column, and that's posted also on that. So you can go back and use those. Let's see, we have that sponsor, and then we also have Zingerman's. I don't know if there's anybody. Zingerman's folks are always working, so I never see them in here, but when they come in, we can thank them. And Zingerman's has been fantastic sponsor for our activities. I've worked with Zingerman's and I use a lot of their ideas, and they use a few of mine in trying to develop their training program for making their restaurants great. And then we also have Bank of Ann Arbor. Jackie, you want to come on up here? And Raymond, who's going to represent Raymond today? All right, come on up. Let's see, we'll start with Raymond. And Green, isn't that the Bank of Ann Arbor company?
It is the Bank of Ann Arbor company.
Yeah, so what's the deal? I think the Bank of Ann Arbor was there first. There's a lot of colors in the spectrum, but you guys, well, how about Green? Just tell us what Raymond is. I know what you put down.
Hey, Rob. So Raymond is a
We're going to have to stand over here so Roger can.
so full service financial consulting firm. We do some audit, tax, but we are more important and want to work with our clients in doing and serving them and consulting and advising on what they need, whether it be the nonprofit world or the for-profit world. We do a lot of work with Neel. I've known Neel for quite a long time, and
you have any stories?
not ones that I can talk about here. So, we're very excited to be able to work with you, Rob. It's been a great relationship, and the important part to us is really to be able to have the LeadersConnect connection.
Excellent.
So.
Excellent. Okay. And you see Jackie, she's not wearing green quite as prominently, but it is there on the badge. You were there first, right? I think. Jackie, what else Bank of Ann Arbor? What's right there?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Kudos to all of us that were here so early on Friday morning and ready to go. It's already a good day.
Let's see what happens in January.
Yeah, no promises. Bank of Ann Arbor is so pleased to have this wonderful association with Dr. Rob and to be one of the sponsors of LeadersConnect. It's always such a warm and positive start to a Friday morning. I'm part of the Trust and Investment Management Group at Bank of Ann Arbor. I work with companies and their 401k plans, but then I also get to work with individuals and nonprofits on investment management. Bank of Ann Arbor was recently recognized as one of the 75 best banks to work for in the country out of 6,000 banks. Employees get surveys to fill out, and those results get tabulated. And I know one of the things that I marked down on my survey was that I really value the opportunity I'm given by the bank to spend time out in the community. So I know a lot of you from the nonprofits you're associated to and the important work that you do in the community. So I really value that opportunity to be out and about in the community. And I'm here with some of my colleagues, Mary Hayes, from private banking, Michael Cole, president of our technology group. He gave me the opportunity to talk this morning. Thank you. So I'm happy to be here, and the bank's happy to be a sponsor.
Thank you guys very much. And, I want to thank you very much. Just give us a hand for helping out. I also wanted to point out Mike Mike Cole, because we're going to be doing an event in Detroit. We've done 2 events, LeadersConnect Detroit, and we're planning some more. So hopefully, I know I talked to Marty Fishoff and some other people who are working in Detroit, but if you are working in Detroit, we want to bring this event. We've done it in Tech Town. We're thinking about doing it maybe at the Avalon Bakehouse on the east side of Detroit. I'm born in Detroit. I guess I didn't wear the t-shirt, but born and raised in that area, so I'm really hopeful about the comeback that's happening. I also want to point out with Mike Cole that he's gone to a lot of Tiger games this year. And Mike, I added it up. The Tigers have lost as a total of 771-3 at the games that you've been to. So I don't think you're a good luck token, and next year you're not allowed to go to the games. Was it 17-1 or no?
They have it under 20.
Okay. I think the Tigers are getting ready to be sold. I mean, it looks like a sellout to me. Get rid of all your high-priced stuff. So the other thing we like to do is the connect part here. And after we do this, I'm going to ask those who are in the nonprofit world that can stay to talk, come and have a conversation about what we might do. And I'm happy to volunteer my time to try to help promote a connection between the nonprofits, because there's a level of cooperation that is required, but there's also a level of competition, because there's only so much time and money that's out there to be contributed in the community. And that's getting harder in some ways too, because there's how many? Co-opetition. Co-opetition. How many nonprofits are there? Over 2,000 in Washtenaw County. Amazing. So that, if you think about that, 2,000, and that's a lot of time and money that those folks need to raise. So how do you co-opitate?
Sure, yeah. You heard it here first.
Sounds kind of nerdy to me. I don't know about that. But so I also want to highlight some of the. So if it could stay afterwards, and we'll talk about that. We've done some of this with the food community as well. We did this last year, and we had, as a result, have got a lot of people with the food community talking to each other, which is really valuable. I wanted to just share a couple of other people who are here that are doing some really cool things. Kit and Sonia, can you guys, or one of you come up? And Kit and I have been working together for a long time. Actually, believe it or not, since he was 17. He was trying to teach me how to use my Macintosh. Come on up. I'm still learning, Kit. I was on the phone last night with Apple for about an hour. But Kit is CEO of a company, IDI, and they just launched a new product which I think is really going to be valuable for nonprofits. And maybe Kit, you could talk about that.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. As mentioned, Kit Dickinson, President and CEO of IDI, or Integrated Design. We are a 30-year software company based here in Ann Arbor. And today's topic is extremely timely because we just launched a product called Grantalytics. And what Grantalytics is a web-based application really targeted at nonprofits, research and development, really any grant-funded organization that wants greater visibility and detail into their grant performance. So we've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of great people, including Stephanie, about the challenges facing you all in the nonprofit space, including how do I have greater visibility into how my grants are performing, am I over or under spending? And so what we've done is take Grantalytics and bring it to life. And what we've found is that a lot of the challenges are that you folks are really living in a day-to-day fight with spreadsheets. You don't have visibility, you don't have collaboration with your executive team, your leadership team. And so what we've done is taken that application, brought it to life, and really teamed up with some of the leading payroll and time and attendance companies, so that on a pay period basis, you can get a refresh of all your labor spend down to the penny, as well as all of your non-labor spend. So it's really exciting. We see a lot of opportunity, both here in the region, but one of our pilot clients has been an amazing story for us in that they focus on hurricane relief. And so they're situated in New Orleans, so they're right in between the devastation of Harvey as well as Irma. And we got this great call when we were checking in just on how things are going in general. And she said that with the time savings that she's had with Grantalytics, she's been able to spend more time on the front line helping coordinate and provide a lot of disaster relief. So it's been amazing to in the short time already have that type of impact, and we're excited to do the same thing for obviously the many grant-funded organizations here in this region. So.
Do they have to be a certain size to benefit from this, or?
Yeah, so what we're finding, the preferred client is going to be generally juggling, over 5 grants, often have dozens of employees working on them, because that's really where it seems like a lot of the pain comes in the management, and then obviously the scrutiny on what you have to report to your funding sources.
That's great. I was with one of my clients yesterday who runs a high-tech firm in artificial intelligence, and they depend on DARPA grants.
Okay.
And he said, well, the CFO is arguing with the project manager, and they don't agree on the numbers. You guys need to talk to
Perfect.
Kim.
Perfect.
That's exactly the kind of problem, I think, to count on, to track the numbers and be able to have everybody on the same page.
Exactly.
So let's hear it for Kim, because not only is it a great product, but it's an older company, 30 years, that has done a brand new product. This is really different than anything else they've done. And Sonia, you should take a bow too, because
Yeah.
Sonia's been very, Kit and Sonia kind of run this company together, and they've been very prominent in getting this done. And I've worked with Kit in one of my small groups. I got to keep moving the good vibes. I worked with Kit in a small group. There's a number of people here that are in my small groups of about 10 people, and the group has been really helpful in getting you started. And so, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I have a quick plug for that small group. Without that small group, without people like Stephanie spending her time, we would not have brought this to life. So it took a lot of effort. It took a village, great people here in Ann Arbor, and Rob was an awesome facilitator making it happen.
Thank you. And could you hang out afterwards if people have more questions? I see some hands going up, but we don't really have time to answer specific questions right now. But we want to, you want to either get Kit a card or catch him for a few minutes, and Sonia, they can tell you about it, because I think it's going to be a great tool to help the nonprofits and the for-profits.
Exactly.
Anybody with grants. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's a lot of people I'd like to introduce here, but I think I'm going to get into the program because we have a lot of information to share, and we'll have a lot of networking time. We've left a lot of time for Q&A and discussion and an interactive program. So I'm going to turn it over to Neel and Stephanie. So Stephanie and I started talking about this maybe a year ago, Stephanie. We ran into each other at was it Morgan in York, or one of those networking coffee shops, where you could drink a coffee all day and get to know each other. And we said this would be a great idea. Stephanie had been working with Neel you started in the same facility, not you started there, but you were working there, and then is now a consultant to nonprofits. So, and then I've known Neel also for several years. You were working with Susan Katz-Froning for a while, and then it became this is the chair and CEO. What's your exact title?
The CEO.
CEO of the
Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation.
I want to get it right. Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. So, and they know each other pretty well. So rather than going into detailed introductions, I'm going to have them introduce one another, and then whoever wants to go first can start. So, who wants to do the introduction here?
Yeah.
Let's hear it for them.
No applause at the end since you just did it now. Let's just be fair about that.
That was for Stephanie.
That was for Stephanie. Hey everyone, thanks for being here. I'm going to briefly introduce my friend and colleague Stephanie Freeth. Stephanie and I crossed paths directly when she joined the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation to head up development work there, fund development and asset development. I quickly realized, so Stephanie has a great Ivy League background, I'll mention that, but more important, Stephanie has an MBA from Northwestern. And as I watched Stephanie work, and as I got to know her, I realized she was just as much or more so a businesswoman and a strategist as she was a vice president for development. So I really came to admire her business-minded strategic thinking, not just around asset development, but around how the nonprofit sector works, how to chart a path towards success, and how to execute. Stephanie then took a step back from the foundation, and she got to get away from the 9-to-5 grind, and she started a consulting firm to put her ideas into action. And I've watched with sort of great enthusiasm as her clientele has grown, and I keep hearing really good things from the nonprofits she works with on strategic planning, fundraising planning, and all other aspects of being a successful nonprofit. And so it's a pleasure. I'm really grateful to Rob and Stephanie that they pulled me into this conversation.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. Neel's one of my favorite colleagues, so when I asked him to do this, I was really excited that he said yes. So Neel, as you heard, is the CEO of the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, and community foundations are really interesting entities. They are, unlike a lot of private foundations that can spend money how they want, community foundation raises money from and is beholden to the community. And I think Neel, in his new role as CEO and as in his operational and programming role before that, really understands kind of cause and effect and looks at ecosystem, the way the ecosystem all comes together. So Neel has been at NEW, Nonprofit Enterprise at Work. I know Pat is here from NEW. So he's got a really, oh, there she is, okay. So he also has a law background. He's been an Ann Arbor native for years, went through the school system here, is really passionate about our community and brings his knowledge to the nonprofits that the Community Foundation supports in a number of ways. So today we're going to be doing a couple frameworks up front, but what we really wanted to do is get all of you talking, because this is LeadersConnect, so we really want to facilitate some of those connections.
Great, so let me start with a question, and then we're going to dive into things. How many here think that nonprofits should be run like a business? Raise your hand if you think nonprofits should be run like a business. Okay, great. Hold that thought, and I want you to be honest when I ask that question again in a few minutes, okay? Just really quickly, because I just want to level set a little bit. What is a nonprofit? I think that's a really important question because there are different definitions out there. So the lawyer in me will tell you that a nonprofit is a state corporation that then gets a certain tax designation from the IRS at the federal level. So there's really two layers to a nonprofit, and more specifically, what you hear a lot is 501c3, right? 501c3 nonprofit. There are dozens of 501c sections in the Internal Revenue Code. There's only one, which is C3, that's intended for public charitable work. And here's the kicker. That's the only broad category where donations to those organizations are tax deductible. So, for example, chambers of commerce are also nonprofits technically. Those are C6s, have some non-taxable benefits, but tax deductible donations are not among them. C3s are a very robust part globally. We have the largest nonprofit population, pound for pound, of any country in the world, and actually philanthropically, the U.S. is about twice as generous as the second most generous country in the world as well. There's a couple of reasons for that. Actually, there's a direct correlation between the amount of government services a country provides and the level of philanthropy that's involved. And so the U.S. is a generous country when it comes to nonprofits, and it's a really robust sector. You should think of 501c3s as private action for public good. Private action for public good, and that's a key differentiator from, let's say, public sector services. As Rob asked and mentioned, in Washtenaw County, the census count says there's over 2,000 501c3s that remain actively registered with the IRS. Now, to be honest, a lot of those may be quasi-dormant or so specialized, maybe a friends group for a small park in one part of the county, that you may never actually see them surface publicly. So the actual sort of active number of nonprofits that you'll see and hear about is smaller than that universal 2,000. From the foundation's perspective, we do not support 2,000 nonprofits every year. It definitely numbers in the hundreds every year and over 1,000 over time, but there's a whole class of nonprofits that are pretty narrowly supported by a small group. And in terms of breakdown, the largest portion of nonprofits from a functional perspective are health and human service nonprofits. They constitute nearly a quarter of the total nonprofit population in Washtenaw County. And then the next sort of tranche down is houses of worship and religious organizations, about 15% of the nonprofit population, arts and culture, another 15%, and then education-focused nonprofits, another 15%. When I say nonprofit, that includes everything from different divisions of the University of Michigan all the way down to your all-volunteer group. So I want you to understand that the ecosystem is large, complex, and does have extremes in it. I will mention recreation 8%, youth development 5%, animals and environment 4%, and that still leaves many, many other categories of nonprofits that are active. And in terms of budget size, these stats actually track pretty well with national stats. nearly half of nonprofits in Washtenaw County have a budget of less than $250,000 a year. That's nearly half. I think when I listen to folks talk about nonprofits, they tend to talk about the big ones, right? The Red Crosses of the world, or heck, the University of Michigan's of the world. The reality is most nonprofits are quite small. And we're going to talk about why leadership matters even more in those contexts. And just really quickly, again, 15% are between $250,000 and $500,000 in budget, another 15% between $500,000 and $1 million, another 15% between 1 and 5, and finally 8% more than $5 million. So that's kind of the hard data. But what we really want to talk about today are the unique challenges faced by the nonprofit sector. Last thing I'll mention about Washtenaw County is we are dense relative to our population with nonprofits, but actually our neighbors in Wayne County east of us have a much denser nonprofit ecosystem for a number of reasons, as you can imagine. The need is great in the Detroit area, and naturally there's been rightfully a response by the community to create many nonprofits to attend to those needs. The Grand Rapids area is another very nonprofit rich area, and then finally the Midland area in mid-Michigan, thanks in part to the Dow family of corporate and private giving, has also spawned a pretty vibrant ecosystem. Anyone want to guess the nonprofit sector's total employment in the state of Michigan? Does anyone want to venture what percent of the working population the nonprofit sector employs? I heard 20, 10, and 15, and the answer is between 9 and 10% of all the state of Michigan. That actually usually surprises folks who don't work in the nonprofit sector. It's a larger sector than you might think. I've noticed in any economic analysis of our county or of our state, the nonprofit sector is often lost and diluted into different functional categories. And so most people don't realize what a force it is for economic impact and for employment. So, like our counterparts across the country, nonprofits face a lot of challenges. I asked you the question, who thinks nonprofits should be run like businesses? And I get it. I actually spent years working on nonprofit infrastructure to make them run more like businesses, but there's a couple of key differentiators that can make that statement a little bit of a fallacy. So the first is, and it's something I miss very much. I started my career at Ford Motor Company, worked at world headquarters for teams led by Ford executives. What I miss about Ford is the single, universal, clean metric we use for everything, and that was the dollar, profit. And that was it. Everything we did was valued and acted upon in very rapid fashion for a global organization with over 300,000 employees. We boiled it always down to the P&L and shareholder value. I didn't appreciate how many efficiencies that offered until I joined the nonprofit sector. And what I discovered was the metric is never as clear, and even a seemingly clear metric, frankly, has a lot of nuance. So let me give you one example. Let's clean up the Huron River, right? Huron River Watershed Council and Laura Rubin, outstanding organization. Well, I guarantee you different board members of that organization have different definitions of what clean up the river means. Is it the dioxane plume? Is it business use across the river? Is it the biodiversity in the river system itself? So even a seemingly clear metric becomes complex very quickly. The same is true for, obviously, human service agencies. Arts organizations, are we enriching the soul? Are we creating a vibrant economic ecosystem? Are we trying to create public art? There is never a clear output metric in the nonprofit sector like there is in the for-profit sector. That alone, I think a lot of business people who don't have exposure to the nonprofit sector don't appreciate. It's not just, oh yeah, that's a little different. That's a fundamental difference between for-profits and nonprofits. The second fundamental difference, and again, I'll call this a structural difference like the one I just described, is that most nonprofits, their direct product does not generate a profit. So let me say that again very carefully. The direct output product of a nonprofit, more often than not, does not generate a profit. That is profoundly different than the for-profit space in ways that you can't even begin to imagine. And again, so when you say a nonprofit should be run like a business, you should stop and ask yourself, do businesses produce product that lose money, first and foremost? And do businesses have the same complex output metrics that nonprofits have? And yes, businesses are complex. Yes, there's very complex strategies, but at the end of the day, the input's money. the output's money, and I really do miss that, honestly. So, there's one other aspect I want to describe that all should be funneling into what you're thinking about leadership of the nonprofit sector. I've talked about two structural constraints. There are also cultural constraints, and let me describe them as capital. Capital input into the nonprofit sector has become more and more restricted over time. And what do I mean by that? Another way of expressing that is the phrase donor control. So we have the luxury over the decades of having more say into how our money as donors is used by nonprofits. Thanks to online giving, thanks to savvy nonprofits who know that they should be tiering the kind of giving that they're receiving, and thanks to the federal government who provides huge sums of money into the nonprofit sector and who's gradually increased their requirements in reporting. What that means is agencies often have capital that are much more severely constrained in their use than for-profit counterparts. And that gets us to the leadership issue, but I want to mention a second capital constraint. And that's in the use of funds, and here's where I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Okay, so who here thinks that nonprofits should do and publish an audit on a regular basis? Audit? Okay. After group. Who here thinks nonprofits should be broad fundraisers so that they're not beholden to a small handful of donors? Okay, all right. I see. You think there's a trick in this question, don't you? That's why I see these half hands kind of doing this, okay? I'm not out to get you, by the way. Who thinks nonprofits should track and evaluate the work that they do? Okay, that's good. And who here thinks that nonprofits should focus more on root causes and less on Band-Aids? Okay, great. That's fantastic. I completely agree. And the bad news is that's all overhead expense. Everything that I just mentioned is an overhead expense. So let me draw a contrast there. We all agree in this room, and I guarantee you everyone will agree with most of those statements that I've made. And yet, a lot of you may say, but I really want a nonprofit with low overhead. And there's a conundrum there. Some call it the overhead myth. I call it the overhead conundrum. It's that we expect a lot from what are effectively small businesses, and yet we're unwilling to invest in those agencies in a way that enables strong leadership, great financial transparency and accountability, innovation. There's a lot of forms of capital out there for businesses to use, growth and innovation capital being two categories. Those are in severe short supply in the nonprofit sector. Frankly, loss avoidance tends to be what nonprofits are forced into. So we all want dynamic, well-led organizations, but as a whole, we are unwilling to concede what it takes to do that. And as much as I love GuideStar and the transparency it provides because they publish the tax returns of all nonprofits, it has exacerbated the situation because it publishes the overhead rate of every nonprofit that has become the universal de facto proxy for everything. And so if there's one thing we take away, if you're not involved in the nonprofit sector, yes, internal use of capital matters, but don't be tricked into thinking that the overhead ratio is the end-all be-all of a nonprofit's effectiveness. And so I mentioned two structural constraints and a couple of cultural constraints that nonprofits face. So what's a nonprofit to do, right? It's a very challenging set of circumstances. From the foundation's perspective, what it comes down to for us is leadership is the X factor. Yes, we need well-run organizations that have strong finances. Yes, we want to see high efficacy, quality programs that are making a difference in this community. But if you ask me, if I had to pick one single factor to predict whether a particular grant is going to be successful or not, I would point to the quality of leadership at an organization as the most predictive factor. When I first joined the foundation, I started noticing that pattern and sort of backed into what I just described to you in trying to figure out what the structural explanations for that were. I would actually present that to be an effective nonprofit leader actually takes a broader set of skills and is more of a challenge than being an effective for-profit leader. For-profit leaders don't like hearing that, but from experience on both sides of the fence, I keep coming back to that conclusion. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie in a second, but the challenge is again, there's another nuanced metric, right? What is quality leadership in a nonprofit and how do you look for it? At the foundation, we talk a lot about adaptive leadership. We have a rapidly changing ecosystem in the nonprofit sector, and frankly, right now at the federal level, is creating all sorts of challenges for the nonprofit sector, both for not knowing what's coming as well as what might be coming eventually. Our nonprofit leadership, are they able to know and anticipate change? That's a key question for us. Is a nonprofit leader, and let me focus on the executive director, a systems level thinker? So in other words, do you think beyond your own organization into how you fit into the broader puzzle in terms of achieving your mission? Is the nonprofit sector leader collaborative with other organizations? Now let me pause there. Whenever I say the word collaboration, let me tell you what some nonprofit leaders are thinking. Uh-oh, Neel wants us to merge. Oh gosh, my well-being is threatened, you want us to merge. Collaboration is a spectrum. Research shows merger is only successful when it's driven by agencies and not by funders. So we are certainly supportive when agencies tell us they want to merge, but I want to be clear, when I say collaboration, I mean just that. Maintaining independence of mission, maintaining independence of organization, but working more closely with other organizations whose work touches upon your mission goals. And finally, the last phrase I'll use is an internal one, and it's not meant to be literal. We think about a profit-seeking mindset as opposed to a loss avoidance mindset. When we talk to nonprofit leadership, executive directors, and the board, are they looking for growth capital, for change capital, for innovation capital? Are they thinking along those lines, and are they actually driving towards a profit as their baseline for operation? We find a strong correlation between that mindset and, frankly, the balance sheets of organizations, and more important for us, yes, balance sheets are important, more important for us, the outcomes being achieved by those organizations. Last thing I'll mention, proxies for leadership. We do look at the backgrounds, literally the CVs of key leaders in a nonprofit organization. We look at board makeup. We don't have the staff power to interview board members or really go deep, but we try to get a sense that there's an active and diverse board of directors. We, almost most important, look for a strategic plan that's living, breathing, evolving. And here's a really important point, and that is engaged by both the staff and the board. And that may seem obvious, but actually you'd be surprised how often one or the other is not engaged in the strategic plan. And then on a really simple level, is there a succession plan? And you may ask yourself, what does that have to do with nonprofit leadership? It's a proxy. It's evidence that the organization as a whole is thinking about leadership. And I'll tell you, if I look at the failed grants we've had over the last 5 years, many of them are attributable to leadership turnover where there wasn't effective succession. I have so many examples of that, and that's become more and more important. So here's the good news. I've told you there's a lot of challenges, and yet in this room we have a lot of great nonprofit leaders that fit the bill. All of you, not just the nonprofit staff, can play a really important role in bolstering nonprofit leadership for making our community a better place, and that's where I'm going to hand off to Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, Neel. A lot of interesting stuff there. So I'm going to focus on two aspects of leadership, and then we really want to get you talking. So I'm going to keep my remarks really short. But what we want to focus on are the two aspects of leadership in terms of volunteerism and philanthropy. And each of you can play different roles in that. So one thing I like to talk to people about is as you're trying to decide where you want to, if you're a board member, actually, how many people in this room have been or are currently board members of nonprofits? Awesome. Okay, so we've got a huge amount of people who are board members. Because a lot of what's said, some applies to staff, some applies to board, but together, that's really what nonprofit leadership is about. So if you're thinking about how to best serve as a board member, there's a life cycle model I just want to have people talk about and understand in addition to what Neel's talked about. So healthy nonprofits go through a couple different phases. The first is called core program development. This is the model I'm referencing is by the TCC group out of New York. But core program development is that first stage where an organization is figuring out who are we serving, what are our products and services, what role are we playing in the community. The second phase is called infrastructure development. So if you think about the infrastructure it takes, like all the things that Neel was talking about, to really run an efficient and effective nonprofit, from fundraising skills to the types of software that Kip was talking about, to finance, all these different things, infrastructure that it takes to pull off that program. The third level is called impact expansion. So when are nonprofits going beyond their direct, the people they're serving directly to have more and more influence in the wider community? So those are the first three active levels. After that, organizations often either kind of could become irrelevant, they could merge, they could dissolve, or they cycle back around to core program development. So even an organization that is 50 or 100 years old is going to cycle back to core program development in order to really figure out, are we staying relevant in the marketplace, are we serving who we need to serve? And one of the reasons I bring this model up is because as a board member, even as a staff member, it's helpful to understand your own skills in the context of where that nonprofit is. There are some skills that you can apply. Let's say an organization is in a turnaround where they really have a lot of work to do. Your skills may or may not be as helpful at that particular moment in time. If you are a marketing expert, you really understand customers, maybe you would be best serving an organization when they're in core program development. So I always encourage people to think about, as they're looking to serve an organization, what are the skills that you bring to the table, and thinking about your why, connecting to purpose to help that organization, but also understanding what life cycle is that organization in, and how can you help them. So that's a bit on the volunteerism side. I want to talk a little bit about philanthropy. This could be its own discussion, but let me ask how many, so if you look at all the giving, all the philanthropic giving that happens in this country, what percentage do you think is from individuals, not corporations, not foundations? Give me numbers on percentage of overall philanthropy in the U.S. that is donated by individuals every year, including bequests. 80? Other numbers? 60, 40? It's actually 80. When you include bequests, it's 80%. So what I see in terms of when I'm helping nonprofits with strategic planning and with fundraising is people think, oh yes, let's go apply for a grant, which is great, but yet, especially since the recession, grant funding has shifted a lot, and a lot of times there's specific outcomes that certain grant funders are looking for. The individual giving market is really important. So just as a donor, you're going to be expected to help nonprofits if you believe in their cause. Please fund them. Overhead is a good thing when it's well used, as Neel was saying. So I'm not endorsing any particular nonprofit. I'm just saying that as an individual donor, it's time for everybody in this room to step up and to do larger gifts than you think you may need to do. Because there's something called the bystander effect, where it's a social psychology term where people look around and think, oh, that person's not doing anything, so I don't need to do anything either. And that is really something to try to overcome in nonprofits. So individual philanthropy is really important, and also when you support nonprofits through philanthropy, you're supporting leaders. So if you think about leadership in the context of not just what's happening on the individual level, there's also the organizational level and also the ecosystem level. We've been talking about that quite a bit, and we're about to get some conversation going to get that started. But I do want to mention, I know we've got a lot of business leaders in the room. I know there are in terms of making philanthropy work between businesses and nonprofits, a lot of times the best opportunities for those are when there is a market that the business wants to reach and the nonprofit can help them reach that goal. So I'm actually going to pick on Jackie here for a second, because I know Bank of Ann Arbor has done a ton of support in the community, but I want to ask her, as a practical example, what are the things that make nonprofit partnerships with businesses work the best? So what's your advice to the nonprofits in the room who are looking for philanthropy from corporations, and how do those work the best?
Jackie, can you come up and address this? We're trying to get video, so we might ask some of you to come up.
Okay,
Especially if you're as well dressed as Jackie.
I know the concept of philanthropy and volunteerism comes from the top down, especially, I know that's how it is at Bank of Ann Arbor, and I have a really clear example. Bank of Ann Arbor has a strong partnership with United Way of Washtenaw County, and when I've heard Tim Marshall, our CEO, talk about United Way, he's a banker, and when he talks about United Way to the employees, he stressed that it's such an efficient way to give money back to the community that's been so supportive of our business organization. I've heard him say, perhaps he doesn't have the time to check out all the agencies that get funding through United Way, but he and Emily feel really confident that when they give to United Way, that those funds are used very efficiently in our community. So is that a good example? Thanks.
I'm actually going to not talk anymore because I really want to get you guys talking. So here's what we want to do. This is the connection part. This is the trying to get this ecosystem going. And there's so many leaders in this room. I know we've got representatives from Avalon Housing. I know we've got representatives. I know we've got Aubrey and Marcia here. They do supportive housing in town. I know we've got 3 representatives from Family Learning Institute, Shireen and Jean and Janine here. So we've got an example of an executive director, a board member, and a development director, because it takes a team, it takes a village to do all this. Let's see, Barbara from Steakhouse Center is here. I know we've got George Morris from the Henry Ford is here, so a couple museum colleagues.
Heidi and I are here from the Women's Center.
Oh, very good.
And I'm representing Athena.
Okay, great.
Great. Gajewski from CSS.
Oh, we wanted to introduce Pam, can you also just introduce our new CSS director here?
Well, I'm the chair of the board at CSS and...
You want to say what that is so people may not know?
Catholic Social Services.
I'm Jewish, I don't know.
That's great. I believe our agency is the largest human service agency in the county where we're serving thousands of clients a month. And Jim, we were blessed to have Jim join us in June as our new executive director. So Jim.
From Creative Many.
Hello, and my board member Joan Moore, who's here today. And we have many of our arts and cultural member organizations, so that's another important part of the collaboration, state and local.
Vince, you got people here. Vince Smith,
Team Gardens, athletes and gardens.
Amy back there.
Another art center, fantastic.
Evangelical Homes of Michigan.
Great.
Leslie Science Adventure Center.
Eric Fritz, Friends of the Washtenaw County Veterans Treatment Court.
what's that again, Ron? Eric?
The Friends of the Washtenaw County Veterans Treatment Court.
Okay, veterans, that's good.
Monica Rancho Island Place.
Steve Fund, the nation's only nonprofit dedicated to the mental health and well-being of students of color.
Great. Yes.
Mary Stewart with Born the Children.
My name is Melvin Parson. I'm the founder and owner of a farming initiative called We the People Growers Association. I'm going to build a world-class urban farm in the township of Ypsilanti, and I need a lot of help.
Club of Ann Arbor.
Ann Smith, United Way, Washtenaw County.
Just stand up so we get you on the camera, on your cameras, so we don't want to miss this opportunity.
Marty Fishoff, I'm newly with Detroit Public Television.
Yeah.
Al Blix, the Intentional Communities of Washtenaw. We provide supported living for persons with developmental disabilities.
Tom Wright, Rotary Club of Ann Arbor. You mentioned once.
Emily Tuesday, Riverside Arts Center in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Kate Van Horn, Apple Play Schools. We provide progressive early education to children from birth to age 12, environmental education, language immersion. And I'm also a proud board member of the Michigan Shakespeare Festival and Child Care Network.
So I just wanted to, I said your name is Amy? Kate. Let me just say one thing about that. Kate had a nice elevator pitch, and I think it's really crucial that people have that. So when we don't have time today, but it's really an important thing because you never know who you're sitting next to, at the dentist office or on an airplane, Bill Gates estate, whatever it might be, that might have somebody. So.
Great. Yes.
Jennifer Spiller, the Big Brothers Big Sisters.
I didn't hear that.
Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Big Brothers Big Sisters. Great. Yes.
So I'll speak up for the Ann Arbor Summer Festival, Mark Barnes, and on the board.
And Ken.
Well, formerly with the University Musical Society at the University of Michigan.
Leslie Raymond, Ann Arbor Film Festival. Pat Reinfeldt, National Network of Depression Centers, Executive Director, and also on the board of NEW.
Yeah, I'm, besides what I do here, I'm also chair of Cyrus's for Safe Water, watching over the Paul Gelman contamination.
Thank you very much.
Scott Hooks from Southwest Research Institute. We do innovative science and technology to benefit the world.
So Scott, could you stand, and also Denise is here. Where's Denise? You stand up, Denise. Say where you are, Denise.
So I'm from SARC. It's a nonprofit doing consortium for cancer research and a rare type of cancer.
Yeah, the point to you, I want to point you out. Where's Karen? She's here from Arbor. Karen, you want to say what you do?
Karen Crow, we do research in nephrology.
So between these three, I don't know how many people are employed, but there's a lot of people who are employed in the nonprofit research sector in this community. It's a very vibrant part, and people don't think about how many people we attract to town, PhDs, MDs. It's a very vital part of the community, so thank you. And it's something we need to think about. I have 2 boys, and they're married, and now I talk to them all the time about the attraction of Ann Arbor, and part of the whole thing about the nonprofit sector, the opportunities here, how well people are being taken care of, the whole community, child care, sports. I mean, we just have a great place, and I think that one piece I want to talk about is this is a selling point for the community. It's a real resource here, and it's tremendous.
So in order to, thanks for, one more, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah Rachel Winston. I work for DRG Executive Search, and I actually search for CEOs in nonprofits. So.
And by the way, I was just going to say, there's a massive demographic shift in terms of baby boomers retiring and executive directors turning over. I saw a statistic from Gary Dems of the Nonprofit Personnel Network that over like 150 executive directors in Wayne County turned over last year. So there's a huge amount, 150. So there's a lot of bench strength that's needed for, a lot of times. I mean, Neel was an example of someone who started the Community Foundation. They did a whole search and they still said he's the right CEO. And so being for a nonprofit to be able to develop leadership from inside, but also sometimes to bring leaders from other sectors can be really important. So there's a really big leadership opportunity that is on the horizon and we're in the midst of right now with the nonprofit sector.
One of the points of that, because I also teach at the Ross School and at the engineering school, and I'm seeing more kids every year that want leadership in the nonprofit. So I have guests who come in, they say, I want to work with Allison because she's working on nutrition. And the students are moving away from, I want to just make the money, to I want to have some meaning in my life. So that's a great opportunity for us too.
Yeah. So one way we wanted to keep the connections going, I want to use an exercise that I call the So That exercise. So when I write mission statements with nonprofits, I really push them to say, what's your So That? Meaning that here's what we do, but here's who we benefit. So here's the challenge I'm going to invite you to participate in. If you can think about your own organization's leadership challenge, you could say, here's what I need, so that who benefits. So I'd love to go around the room and have people, say, here's what I'm looking for, so that this group or these people can benefit. Does that make sense? So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that, but that's the conversation that we want to get going now, so that you can hear from each other and then make those connections. So try to phrase it in that format so that we can get the most people adding to this discussion. Anybody want to go first?
And to do that, let's have people kind of line up and come up and do it, because it's easier again for the video than move it around. So if you want, think about it for a minute, and then come on up and take the mic and have an opportunity.
And so I'll give an example. I'm working on a book on strategic planning right now for nonprofits. So here's my example. So I am welcoming stories from nonprofit leaders who have, and board members who have been through strategic planning. I want to hear your lessons learned so that the people who read this book can benefit from those lessons learned and maybe not make the same mistakes, or they can build on what you've done. That's
so that you can be on Oprah, right?
No, I don't mean Oprah. I really to help, not to help advance leadership and strategic planning in practice. So, did I see someone? Ken, you go first.
Well, from our mission statement, so that we can inspire individuals and enrich communities.
So who we are.
So what do you want? Like what are you what are you looking for? Is there a leadership challenge that you want help with from people in this room? So that you can, so what's the piece you want to help with? How can people hear?
Okay, well, one of the things, I think next month, you're inviting my successor to come. And you know, I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. But one of the things I would want to comment on is how we are now seeing the shift from old guys, old people, to younger. So Tina Olson is now going to take over at the museum. Matthew Van Beesen's coming from New York. I'm really excited about that. But the rest of our mission is to connect audiences and artists in uncommon and engaging experiences. So we're in the experience business so that you can inspire individuals and enrich communities. So let other people talk.
Okay.
Just come on up. Just line up here.
Barbara?
Actually,
just line up. Don't stand in front of the camera.
well, I think they can just stand up and use their Ken Fisher voice.
Okay.
Well, then it means I won't do that. Good morning, I'm Barbara Neesmane. I'm the Executive Director of Safe House Center. And when I think about the Leadership Challenge, we need leaders, volunteer leaders, to be part of the work that we do at all levels of the organization to elevate what we are doing so that we can continue to save lives for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault.
And are there specific skills you're looking for?
There are specific skills, yes we are. The specific skills that we are looking for are ambassadors, fundraisers, and visionaries.
Great.
May I add, I don't know if this is going to cut into it, but one of the things that I teach a lot is the ask. So be sure, I think you asked her, what is your ask? Particularly of this audience, not necessarily general, but for example, there may be people here that could provide some of the things you need. So if there's something that.
And if you have that, please be in touch with me. I've got to run out at 9, but I want to know.
We need to be over here for the camera. So, Fred.
My name is Fred Brown.
Hold it close, Fred.
My name is Fred Brown. I work with the University of Michigan Social Venture Fund, and the University of Michigan Social Venture Fund is a group of students that are looking for business plans to help fund important work in the community. We have a healthcare sector, an environmental sector, an education sector. So if people have business plans they'd like to submit, we'd love to fund them.
Come on, just show that.
So that we can do better in the community and raise money and teach the students how to get involved in the local community.
Great, thank you.
Why don't you all line up over there?
Yeah, come on over that side.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Goulet, and I'm president and CEO of an organization called Creative Many Michigan. And we are statewide, all about developing creative people, creative places, and the creative economy for resilient and competitive Michigan. And we've been through a rebranding shift over the last year and a half, 2 years, just did a new strategic plan. We are a nonprofit. We are developing a set of benchmarks that's focused really to the question of profit, on social profit. What is the social profit that we can influence and cultivate through our work statewide? We're thinking of ourselves, yes, we're nonprofit, but we're also thinking of ourselves as a scale-up, right? Entrepreneurial opportunity. And I would love to be able to engage with a savvy group of business and entrepreneurial leaders that could help our organization be able to think about the new strategies we could bring to bear, to be able to influence that in our business model, in the work that we do, but also then how we could utilize that intel and that expertise to be able to think about the services that we deliver in research and advocacy and professional practice programs and grant making for our artists and creative maker designer constituencies, small businesses, organizations, so that we can share that out.
Here we got to sew that.
Yeah,
got to sew that.
My name is Tom Wright. I like to capture stories. I have been working with the Youth Impact Program, which is at University of Michigan and other schools throughout the United States. They take at-risk youth and give them mentoring socially, academically, etc. They have partnered with the U.S. Marines to teach discipline to at-risk youth throughout the United States. We recently took videos of Jack Harbaugh and the Harbaugh family, and they have invigorated, as you can imagine, youth impact nationwide. They have increased literacy and...
Tom, I'm going to just give the time. We're going to keep it like a 20-second type.
Not a problem.
With a
anyhow, we are telling stories, and we are so that we can improve the future for our communities and children throughout the United States.
And what do you need from the people in this room?
Stories of what they're doing with youth so we can expand the program.
There we go. Okay, that's it.
Let's get to that quick.
Okay, Aubrey Patino, soon to be Executive Director of Avalon Housing. Avalon Housing is a nonprofit supportive housing developer and service provider. I need diverse board members with behavioral health expertise so that we can support the population of chronically homeless individuals that we have housed over the last 3 years. Upwards of 300 people that we have permanently ended homelessness for.
Can I, people that stood up earlier about research institutes, listen well, because those are the people that have that skill set. So I would go to them and maybe give a presentation.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Amy Sell, and I'm currently working with a number of nonprofits that are focused on helping provide career opportunities to Ypsilanti area youth. So I'm looking for employers that want to engage Ypsilanti schools and other areas to provide employment opportunities or job shadows or other ways to really engage the youth, especially on the eastern side of the county, so that every youth between the ages of 16 and 24 has a great career opportunity. Thanks.
Hello, Drew Gajewski with Catholic Social Services, and what we're looking for is a greater awareness so that we can tap into that individual donor base more, and for the specific purpose of trying to unite in a more value-added way to the continuum of healthcare to affect population health in a very specific way, primarily with regard to case management services, centralized intake, quality reporting, up and down that continuum. And what's of particular value for us is, of course, those with the greatest needs. And so that's really our focus. So your support would be very much appreciated.
Okay. You guys can walk back that way so you don't cut across the camera.
Hello again, Kate Van Apple Play Schools. So I have 3 asks, I guess. The first one is that I would love more opportunities to connect in a group like this, where we get the opportunity to talk to one another and help each other out. My second ask is that I'd love to see, I'm new to the nonprofit sector. We've only been a nonprofit for 3 years. We've been in business almost 7. But as I've learned more and more, I find myself frustrated with like the lack of coordination between the for-profit, the nonprofit, and the government. And I'd love to have some kind of summit where issue by issue gets tackled in a coordinated effort. And I forgot my third ask, so that's what I'm asking for. Oh, my board. If you know any fabulous board members, send them my way. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shireen Budden, Executive Director of Family Learning Institute. Our organization provides one-on-one tutoring for children grades 2 through 6 in Washtenaw County. Primarily, we're working in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti, and as you know, the need is great. The children are many, and so I am here with my board president, Jean, and she's going to tell you what we need as a board.
Nice. Nice turnout.
I'm Jean Wallman, president of the FLI.
Hold it close to you.
Okay.
There you go.
As the board president, what I'm always looking for is community members who are passionate about education and about helping our young kids who are falling behind, economically challenged kids who are behind and will suffer for their whole lives if they don't reach proficiency by 3rd grade. So we want educators who are passionate for that. We need a diverse board of educators, citizens, committed and connected people in the community who can help us reach our goals.
I just wanted to give you a kudo, and I think that you did something in your little pitch that was valuable that I didn't hear from some other people. You talked about the pain, because pain sells, it's big. And seriously, if you're going to sell something, so you said the children who suffer. So I think in your pitches, you need to say, we ask because there is this pain, and that will evoke a lot more in people than say what wonderful things you're doing. Nobody likes to buy wonderful things. They like to do, you'll go to the drugstore at night for Advil, but you won't go for vitamin C, right? All right.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Spiller from Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we're in need of community leaders who like to be ambassadors and help us share our story to what we call a concentrated mass of folks. So if you have an organization or a business where we can be in front of a group of people to talk to them about our need for mentors so that we can match the 140 kids that are on our wait list.
Hello everyone, my name is Vincent Smith on behalf of Team Gardens, and our mission is to get the kids excited about gardening so that we can plant a community garden in every athlete hometown.
Great. Thanks, Vince. Okay.
Hi, I'm Amy Goodman. I'm the director of Washtenaw Literacy, which you can probably discern from the title what we do. What I need and what I want, for the last couple of years, we've been gathering data at various points in the social service network system about the incidence of adult literacy. And our point is to look at a systems approach in terms of alleviating poverty as a literacy as a root cause and basic skills. What we want to do that so that we can help build a systems foundation for attacking poverty in our community in Washtenaw County. What I want is folks to help with this data project. We are partnering with the Poverty Solutions Center at the University of Michigan to help assess people who are seeking housing assistance, for example, or food assistance. I would like board members or consultants or volunteers to help us at that level. Work with our robust data systems that we're developing.
So that
we can help alleviate poverty in Washtenaw County.
Okay, great. Thank you. Should I go ahead? All right. So we're going to move to the topic is about leadership and leadership challenges. Now, should we take your poll again, Neil? How many people think nonprofit should be run like a business? Hands are down. You give it a chance. So there's some, you're saying yes, some, and some.
The whole point is just understand what you mean when you say that. I actually believe in that statement, but there's a nuance that is lost on a lot of folks who aren't in the sector.
There's a play on that I think is emerging, at least it was before the election, and that is that we, the leaders of the for-profit world need to treat for-profits a little bit more like nonprofits and treat people more humanely and use, because leadership principles that are humanitarian work, and sometimes the ones that come out of business, the old ones, the kind of whip and master kind of thing, does not work really well.
Can I speak to that? We often, in the nonprofit sector, view ourselves as the recipient of benefit from other sectors, whether it's the public or private sectors. I'll point out one trend that folks don't talk about, which is the proliferation of mission into the for-profit sector that really emanated from the nonprofit sector. You see a whole new generation of business leaders, and it's all the flashy ones like Google and Mark Zuckerberg, all the way down to local business leaders who actually embed a mission that goes beyond generating profit. And I think the nonprofit sector should be proud and taking great credit. And I teach at the Ford School, and I will tell you in the 10 years that I've taught graduate students there, there's been a sea change in their interest in, yes, they want to make money. Nothing wrong with that, but they'd like to make money and do good at the same time. And I've been thrilled to see that. And again, I always think, thank you, nonprofit sector, for projecting those values onto the rest of society.
So we're going to do this now. We have a lot of people here. I want to do groups of 6. So I think the easiest way to do that is just turn your chairs right around so you talk to the people behind you. And we're going to try to come up with the top 10 leadership challenges that you have as leaders of nonprofits. So if each group could talk about maybe coming up with one if they agree with it, and we'll go around and hear what those are. And that maybe we could follow up with this meeting between the 3 of us and try to facilitate leaders getting together so that they can meet those leadership challenges. So just turn around. We're going to give you 5 minutes to come up with one, the most pressing leadership problem. Introduce yourself. Stephanie's giving away $5 million to the church and stop talking. Right, Stephanie, where's everybody going?
Okay, we're going to have this group right here. We're going to go around the room. Number 1 leadership challenge that you're seeing. What we're going to do is compile a lot of these responses kind of in a blog format and share them back out. I want to hear from this group what your thoughts are.
Yes. Communication. Being in a world where there are 10 words and then you move on to the next new thing and handling details.
Getting your story out. The things we got down is getting the story out, answer the so what question, making the case for the arts in the midst of making basic human needs, more financial resources, building meaningful partnerships. That's the list we have.
That's you? Okay.
And we'll just do the ones if there's something not mentioned. We don't have time for everybody, so.
We talked about leadership and often the fact that there isn't adequate leadership training, continuity of leadership, passing on policies and information. Also, that nonprofits often are very tight on funding, so the balance between leaders can be good. Inspirational leaders, people who engage people, are sometimes not the same people who are good at execution and detail, and finding a way of having enough of the whole band of skills that's required is hard to do in a nonprofit.
Back here? Okay, over there next.
So we talked about the balancing act of data.
There's a room here of 100, but 100 million people will see it.
Okay, so we did. We talked about how it's a balancing act of dealing with the day-to-day operations versus finding the time to vision. And finding the time to really understand where you're going, your goals, and your your outcomes and objectives, and then really trying to figure out the operations and the day-to-day details and the balancing act.
Great, I go that way.
Say your name, please, as we're doing this. And please talk to the mic because 100 million are going to be seeing this by Monday.
It's a lot of pressure. Hi, I'm Emma Dolce. And the the thing that we came up with was sort of talking more about communication and a disconnect between staff and volunteers and board members, like looking at a disconnect between boots on the ground and people who are kind of making higher administrative decisions, and just sort of trying to info share more between board members saying, hey, this is why we're funding this in this way, and staff being able to express their concerns and their issues with like on the ground work and their needs. So that was what we came up with.
Very good.
Stand up.
No, we're covered.
Okay, anybody else? John, back over here.
Ken Hillenberg, Kiwanis Club of Ann Arbor. We discussed many of the similar issues of leadership in terms of strategic planning versus operational issues. I think it's very difficult for people to sometimes focus on strategic planning and get away from thinking merely about operations. We talked about the issue of getting people to understand that perhaps we need a director. We needed somebody who's paid to do a lot of the work, that we have this a new president every year, so there's a problem with continuity of leadership, but many people see hiring a director as affecting their overhead and so forth, and how that's going to appear and so forth. So a lot of the same issues.
Hi, Susan Westhoff, Leslie Science and Nature Center. We talked a lot about communicating with constituents in the community. It's less even than an elevator pitch anymore. It's a tweetable world. And how do we communicate what we do and the breadth of what we do in whatever it is, 140 characters or less? That's a real challenge for a lot of us, nonprofit and business alike.
Hi, Eric Rex. All of our conversations tend to focus on governance as well as the leadership point that was made. And there seem to be multiple stories of dealing with, say, that early phase where you have a charismatic founder and you're really small, and then you get bigger and you bring it aboard, and how that can end up when either the charismatic founder gets driven out or the nonprofit actually dies because you can't actually turn that corner. So this thing we sort of all took away was the importance of really getting the best people in there and having a good system set up that they can work together. And if the board needs to move someone out, they can, that sort of stuff. So back to that sort of leadership and governance.
Right here. Here too. Okay.
Just shout out, Kate.
We talked a bit about, I'm Jennifer Spiller from Big Brothers Big Sisters. We talked about culture and how to share culture out and kind of expectations of culture, and how do you have time to do that when you're on the ground trying to implement and operate every day. So having the time to do that.
Just shout out for time.
Hi, I'm Kate O'Hara,
and with our six, the thing that I found that was kind of interesting is that we're mostly for-profit. And Pam here is with United Way. I'm not sure, but we were talking about different issues as far as what we see is lacking, and it would be more great quality volunteers. And that was actually coming from Pam. And Pam, just if you would explain a little bit as far as what United Way is doing as far as your communication, because I noticed there was a lot of things there. Sure.
So as far as volunteers go, we started volunteerwashtenaw.org. It's an easy way for nonprofits to put what their needs are online, and it's a really easy way for volunteers to connect. You can go on and use a number of different filters to see what the opportunities are, and then use your expertise to really help the community benefit.
I just wanted to say a couple of things about, maybe we could share, we have a few more minutes. Pam's talking about Washtenaw. You say it again, Washtenaw report.
VolunteerWashtenaw.org.
VolunteerWashtenaw.org. And I wonder if we could brainstorm a little bit in here what resources you have, but also what we could get. I mean, because one of the things that I'm really aware of is that I just started teaching at the University of Michigan 3 years ago. I wanted to wait till I had Social Security before I started teaching. And I'm aware that the students are on fire and want to do things, but I'm also aware it's impossible to connect. There's so many different things going on at the university. And Margaret, is there a central office you know of? The business school has 5 different projects. Pam, you know of something like that? Margaret? Yeah. Go ahead, Margaret.
No.
Go ahead, Pam.
So the students can connect through the Ginsberg Center at the University of Michigan.
The Ginsberg Center.
Yep, and
So
And
the
then
Ginsburg Center and Volunteer Washtenaw are connected, so.
Okay, so if you want to get student projects, you could go to the Ginsburg Center at University of Michigan. Just Google that. Tim Freeth is here from Google. He left, I think, so we're putting in a plug for him. That's Stephanie's. Yes, what other resource?
I was just going to say the Ross School of Business has the Center for Social Impact, and they do the board fellow program there with the MBA students. So
I get emails from 5 different Ross professors that are doing classes that are trying to find companies and nonprofits to work with. But how do you get in there and know about that? That's the key. Yes?
I want to plug Circle K.
Circle K? Is that a restaurant? Or?
Circle K is an organization that is under the aegis of Kiwanis Club of Ann Arbor, and it's housed at the University of Michigan. They do hundreds of service projects every single week and have over 150 or 160
So you can
members.
Google Circle K,
Circle
University of
K
Michigan.
at the University of Michigan.
Okay, and don't forget Eastern, Concordia, Washtenaw Community College. I mean, there's just tremendous resources in this community, and business school at Eastern. There's a lot of different places. I don't know. Let me ask this. There's a program in Flint called BEST. Is there something like that in Ann Arbor which enables consultants to come in and work with and be paid by
the new center? BEST is a capacity building project. It's been around in Flint for a long time. I'd say the closest analog is the New Center Nonprofit Enterprise at Work. Does facilitate connections between consulting knowledge that's local with nonprofits that have projects. Those are generally paid consulting engagements, so it's not volunteer consultant teams, and actually neither is BEST. So New is a great resource if you're a nonprofit looking for consulting expertise, because they tend to act as a hub for that.
As a consultant myself, I would think if there could be some cooperation so that rather than being asked to come in for one nonprofit to do, let's say, a team building, we could do something for 100 people, bringing it together. Yes, there's a comment about that? Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to also mention the Michigan Nonprofit Association. I think many of the nonprofit organizations
Michigan Nonprofit, okay.
that are members there, but they are also a great resource and willing to come in and partner on training.
Al, you've been in this for a long time. Are you aware of ways that consultants can leverage their capacity to go to nonprofits? Is there anything available like that other than individuals selling their services? Come on up.
I've been a member of, one of the consultant pool at BEST in Flint since 2004, and I've probably worked with a dozen or more nonprofits there. I'm not really aware, I'm certainly aware of the New Center, but I have not personally seen a connection that would bring folks together.
Yeah.
But there's
So
absolutely an opportunity to do the kind of joint capacity building that you're talking about.
Yeah, because I think BEST has some funding itself. It's a nonprofit.
Well, it's a tool of the Flint Community Foundation, the United Way, and the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation and the Ruth Mott Foundation. They put money in a common pot to fund that consulting capacity.
So consultants go in there. I think we go at a slightly reduced rate, but it's still get paid for your time.
Right.
So anyway, if there's some ideas about how to leverage the consulting, the university, any other brainstorm ideas of things that might be happening or could happen, yes?
Well, one thing that
Stand up.
One thing that
Get your exercise.
I got great benefit from was the coordinated funders do capacity building grants, and this last year we got a grant to do the Zing Train. So it was not 9 months, 8 months of all kinds of different leadership.
What did you say that was?
Zing Train.
No, where did you get the money for it?
The coordinated funders through their capacity building grants have focused, right, Neil, most of the money, all the money in that direction. So instead of giving individual organizations specific things that are just to their organization what they need capacity for, everyone's going, those that are funded are going through this training, which I found super valuable in learning more about that service leadership component.
Thanks, Jen. The coordinated funders are a funding collaborative. Pam, United Way is a great leader in that work. Community Foundation, St. Joe's Hospital, and then 3 units of government all pool their money together to fund human service agencies.
How do they connect with that? How do you access that?
It's a complicated way to access it. There's first.
Secret code here.
It's very clear how to get in, and then there's a lot of applications involved. Both a request for information is the first step, and then after a request for information, those that are approved may then submit an RFP. And actually, we just recorded a Coordinated Funding 101 webinar that we'll be making sure nonprofits get to see. And most nonprofits in the human service areas are already on our communications list to know when they should be connecting with the program.
I think that this leveraging resources in the community, another one that's fantastic, and again, I don't know how to find these people, but there's many graduate students who have stay-at-home significant others, and those people often have MBAs, they have doctorates, and they don't want to work because they're maybe going to be here for 2 years of law school, or they're raising young children, men and women. And I know that you know how to reach those people, Stephanie? You have any idea? I think the university, each school has a place where those people can apply for work. So if you go to Ross, there's a place where you could post. But I'm just thinking a lot of those people don't need to work, but they want to be active. So if you could figure out how to tap into, and some of this just maybe through social media, saying, you know, we're the Depression Center, we're looking for people who want to volunteer to provide our tech support, and you know, get into that university, because there's tremendous brain power in this community that people don't know how to connect to the people like you who they want to work with, and they find one place and maybe they like it or not, but then you know, it'd be fine if you could figure out a way to leverage all of that. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, Jim.
There are a number of electronic marketplaces that are now intelligent electronic marketplaces. So if you're looking for consultants, I am on the board of a company called RX Fulcrum.
RX Fulcrum?
RXFulcrum.com. If you're a medical researcher or a healthcare researcher and you're a consultant or a biotech company seeking research services, this is a matchmaking service that the founders started Match.com and Intuit. You call down menus and it automatically then creates an RFP that then searches the communities, both for-profit and not-for-profit communities who are willing to support that kind of.
Okay, so that's Fred Brown, so if you want to reach out to him.
One other resource is SCORE, and I don't recall what the acronym stands for, but it's retired business professionals who are willing to consult on a volunteer basis. And I've heard mixed results depending on the consultant you work with. So treat them like any consultant, interview them, treat it like an RFP. But they're one of the most coordinated pool of volunteer consultants that I'm aware of in the Ann Arbor area.
I'm also aware of
SCORE, S-C-O-R-E.
Service Corps of Retired Executives.
Or you can do SCOT, which is Service Corps of Tired Executives. So there's also, I would think using LinkedIn is really important. I'm amazed. I started using LinkedIn. I like Facebook a lot, but I could post something on LinkedIn and get 2,000 visits to a post I had. I know you're on there a lot, Jackie. And I think if you guys all should, how many of you are on LinkedIn? Is everybody on LinkedIn? Is anybody not on LinkedIn? You should get on LinkedIn. And Roger, let me ask you, you might know this, but where is a resource in town that people could get help with their managing their social media? Because people might be on but not know, how to use it well. Are there people out there that you know of, Roger, or other people that can help leverage that?
Yeah, well, LA2M.
LA2M, okay.
Wednesdays.
Wednesday at the pub.
At lunch.
But I think, again, if you could post things, I need things, again, to ask on LinkedIn, you can reach a lot of people, and you can invite a lot of people. You don't have to necessarily just do the people you know. I mean, it's a little bit safer, I think, than some of the social media things, but you use some of that, Jerry? I know that's it's very little bit, okay. But I've been amazed at LinkedIn. I don't know if there's any other social media channels that you guys recommend.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is one of the better ones, but again, it goes back to the ask. So if I get a LinkedIn connection, I want to know, how can I be helpful to someone? So be really specific, because I don't tend to accept everybody, because you're really supposed to kind of know people through your network on LinkedIn. So ask for specific reasons, connect with that person, ask for phone call, coffee, that kind of thing. What do you use?
Stephanie, you want to say how we might follow up to this?
Yeah, so, whenever we have these types of events with a lot of energy in the room, the question is always, what do we do next? So if there is interest in kind of establishing a more regular gathering, I'm happy, Rob and I can help facilitate that. So feel free to leave cards up front, and if because again, going back to this ecosystem idea, how can we help each other make the ecosystem stronger so that we can serve more of our, our community and our fellow citizens. So if there is interest in some ongoing support and forums like this, let me know afterwards, and we'll see what we could come up with.
Let me just ask you, Neel, is there you think you're talking about mission statement, is there a mission statement for the nonprofit? I mean, for example, is there a mission statement for all of Washtenaw County saying that we want to be known as the county with the greatest, social nonprofit vibrant network, things like that?
There's no collective mission statement. Each unit of government has a pretty inspired mission statement. The county does, the city does, and other municipalities do too. I think that mission is encompassed in the actions that we all take together. So rather than a statement, it's actually this room and folks working together. Washtenaw County in Michigan is known as a really robust nonprofit network, and those values I think are pretty well projected. I'm going to put in a shameless plug. I've been waiting this whole time for a shameless plug.
What do you need, Neel?
Actually,
the game, Ohio State has sold out.
I need you to come to our open house. So the Community Foundation, after 10 years in the same space, has renovated our space and changed it up a little bit. My 20-year-old chair is gone as of a couple of weeks ago. And October 10th at 4:30, we are having a completely open to the public open house. All of our staff will be on hand, so come have some snacks, check out the new digs, and meet up with some of our staff.
Where is it?
301 North Main Street, on Main and Miller on the 3rd floor, and we will be publishing an invite to the Observer and on our website.
So we're going to follow up. Certainly you're all welcome to come in October when we're going to do the nonprofit in the arts, and I can already see there's a lot of overlap. Certainly you're all welcome. I can see we're going to outgrow this room. First we started with 80 people, we filled that up, and then we got to 90, and then I signed up 100, and now every seat is filled, and I think we had a waiting list, so we might need to find a little bit nicer, well, not a bigger, I don't think we can find it. Actually, I want to keep here, so sign up early, I guess is probably what we want to do. Ken?
When will the video of this be available so we can share it with others?
Roger?
Oh, Monday or Tuesday.
Fantastic.
Okay, if you could have it Monday, Roger, I'll put pressure on, I'll put it on the Dr. Rob column, okay, so, no pressure. We'll put this top 10, Stephanie's gonna write something up about summarizing these leadership challenges and some of the asks. But one of the things that I, as a communication specialist, I'm a writer, a speaker, I noticed that you guys could sharpen up your pitches a little bit. I think that there could be more compelling pitches. Would you agree, Tina?
Yeah.
And so maybe that would be a workshop that we start with. It's just, I actually work with Joe Marr, who does sales training, and I think we should bring in Joe to teach you guys how to do a sales pitch, because I hate to tell you all that you're salespeople, and that we all are, but I mean, and to do that really well, it's an art. It's not just intuitive. So we might maybe organize something like that. I'm sure Joe will volunteer for it, but he's probably really willing to do that. All right, so there's lots of food left over. We don't want to leave that out. They're going to throw it away. So eat and take some back to your volunteers at the office. And hang around as long as you like.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Give him a hand. Yeah.